Start over again. Okay. Hey, this is a comic book man coming to you for another video, and we have a very special guest, Comic Collector Geek, Alan. I mean, he is very expert on Golden Age comics, and he's got a lot of good keys from Marvel and DC. I mean, I really enjoy his what he shows on his channels, and of course, you know, he won the unboxing award and on YouTube, and that's a very big honor. But we're gonna let turn it over to Alan and let him show some of his collection, and also we're gonna let him talk a little bit about himself, which I know a lot of people know about him already. But we'll let him take it away, and I got a few questions for him, but I'd like for him to go ahead and say a few things and show a few comics.
Hey, so thanks for having me on your show. I actually got started collecting comics when I was very young. My parents would always I was sort of bad at reading, I guess. So my parents would like give me comics to try to encourage me to read more. So the types of comics they would give me were like a lot of the Disney style comics, like Uncle Scrooge, and Richie Rich was another one that they'd give me, and a lot of the Donald Duck stuff as well. So that's really how I got my start in comics, but I didn't really see that as comic collecting. I just saw, so my early comics were all trashed. Like, because I was a kid, so I just would I'd mainly look at the pictures actually when I was really young, and then I'd sort of draw on them or do silly things with them. So a lot of my early ones are all trashed, but the story that I always tell people, and this is how I got into collecting, was actually through coins. I collected coins for a really long time. From when I was like 7 years old, I became like sort of an expert on coins. I was like very knowledgeable about coin collecting at a very young age. I had memorized the complete price guides for U.S. and Canadian coins, which is kind of a weird thing to do as a 7-year-old. But so you could ask me any coin, and I could tell you how much it's worth back then. And then I went to a coin store, and they had a comic on the wall. And I was like, I knew comics, but I didn't realize that they were a collectible item. So then I was like, oh, that's really cool. So it was a Howard the Duck #1. And I was like, oh, wow, that's really cool. So I thought it was very different from the comics that I got. It had the duck element, which Uncle Scrooge or Donald Duck had, but it looked a bit more sexy, a bit more sexy than the ducks that I had grown up with. So I was like, oh, I really want to get that one, but it was really expensive. It was like $10, and I thought, wow, that's a huge amount of money. Back in the 1980s, right? Early 80s.
Oh yeah, that was a good bit.
Yeah, so I actually saved up for like a month or two to get the money. I had to do chores and a whole bunch of things and save all my allowances, and then I went back to the coin store and bought that Howard the Duck #1. And ever since, I've been collecting comics and really trying to keep my comics in good shape. Be really like, oh, okay, don't mangle them so much. And then I really got into collecting in the 90s. And one of the first things I gravitated to was this one, Bone.
Oh, yeah.
So this is Bone. Yeah.
It's hard.
Hard book to find. This is like Bone #1 from Jeff Smith. This is like early 90s. The other thing that I got into was like the Good Girl art stuff. Bad Girl in the 90s, like, Lady Death and Vampirella. And then that led me down a whole different rabbit hole where I started collecting a magazine called Warren.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. Are you familiar with Warren? Or?
Yeah, Warren does the Vampirella. Am I right about that?
Yeah, Vampirella, creepy, eerie, famous monsters. Yeah. And I basically, like, I'm a completionist, so
I have all of it, yes.
So the way when I buy something or get into something, I want to get every issue. I want to get everything related to it. So I decided I'll get the complete Warren collection, like all the magazines that they ever produced. And so I managed to do that. It only took me 20 years to do, but I managed to do that. It's like several hundred. Actually, my Warren collection, I think it has like several thousand books in all. It's a massive collection. I think it's like 8,000 books. I think that's
more Warren than I do on my whole comic book collection.
Yeah, so that's just Warren. I got everything. So I'll show you. This is actually a magazine called After Hours.
Mm-hmm.
And this is After Hours number 1 from 1957. It's the very first Warren magazine that they ever produced. And so Warren was kind of an interesting company because they wanted to get into publishing. Okay, it was James Warren that started Warren, and he wanted to get into publishing but didn't know how. Didn't know what to do. But he saw that Playboy, which had come out, I think, a year earlier, I think it was like 55 or 56 that Playboy came out, was very successful. So he's like, oh, I can do that. Get some sexy girls, put them on a cover. And he published this thing called After Hours. So this was his version of Playboy. And it's not as interesting as Playboy, to tell you the truth. But what happened was he, in the 4th issue of After Hours, he was teamed up with a guy called Forrest J. Ackerman. And Forrest J. Ackerman was a guy who was very into sci-fi, into horror movies and stuff like that. He was actually the guy that coined the word sci-fi. And he was such a big collector of sci-fi stuff that he had all these old movie stills and stuff like that. And since they were kind of partners, he said, hey, can I do like just a segment about horror and monsters inside of your your adult magazine, which is kind of a funny thing to do. So they had this section that was devoted towards monsters. Well, that After Hours number 4 became such a popular issue that they realized, hey, maybe people actually like this monster stuff. So they stopped doing the adult stuff and started doing monster stuff. And they came out with a comic called, or magazine called Famous Monsters of Filmland. Okay? Mm-hmm. And that magazine did extremely well. And then they were like, okay, what other things can we do within this same genre? And then they did a magazine called Creepy. Then they did it. That was really successful. Then they did another one called Eerie. And they were like, oh, but we need something like a little bit more sexy, a little bit more, campy. So they decided, and Forrest and James Warren had seen this movie Barbarella. So they thought, oh, that'd be really great if we could create a character based on Barbarella. And they were working with an artist called Frank Frazetta. And they basically said, hey, Frank, can you create us a vampire, sexy host for our comic? And he created Vampirella. And so then Vampirella became a whole thing and, went to 112 issues through Warren. So it was just this big publishing thing. Like, as I said, they had all these different titles. And they worked with some of the greatest artists in publishing. So that was kind of one of the things that I collected, and it was just a massive collection of books to get. But the thing that I thought was interesting about it was it kind of led into a different genre altogether for me, because a lot of the artists that worked at Warren, they were connected to the Golden Age. So the Golden Age of comics was from 1938 to 1954, really up to maybe almost 55 sometime, kind of that overlap, beginning of 1955. And what happened was there was a book called Seduction of the Innocent, And it basically was talking about how comics were corrupting the youth of America and making them like be criminal and crazy, and so, and it was really really hard on comics. And some of the comics, I'll show you some of the ones that were in it. So we got like something like this. This is a book that was mentioned in The Seduction of the Innocent, where it was showing examples of comics that were related to the seduction of the innocent, related to the ones that are corrupting the youth of America. And this is Weird Mysteries, number 7. This is a Bernard Bailey cover, actually. It's just a great skull cover and craziness going on. And what happened was because that book, The Seduction of the Innocent, was so popular, they actually had Senate hearings. Okay, and those Senate hearings basically concluded, were going kind of in a bad way for the comic industry. And so the comic industry kind of freaked out about it and realized that they had to do something or they were going to be out of business altogether. So they created the Comic Code Authority. And if you see any more modern books, you'll always see that little stamp on the book that says approved by the Comic Code. And what happened, though, when that code came into play, a whole bunch of these publishers went out of business, overnight. So it went from 2,000 different publishers to 200 within a year.
Dang.
So a lot of these people that were producing comics were now out of a job. And they realized that magazines were kind of exempt from following the Comic Code Authority. So a lot of these really great artists like Frank Frazetta, Harvey Kurtzman, Al Feldstein, just a slew of these really great talented artists were like, okay, we'll produce comics but in magazines instead.
And that's
way of getting around it. So that's why Warren was basically getting all these great artists that had sort of been disenfranchised from the comic industry and brought them into magazines. So there was a kind of a connection there between what I was collecting in Warren, and I was like seeing the same artists that were these great artists in the Golden Age. So I was like, it sort of became a very natural flow for me in a weird way that I was interested in these same artists that were coming out of the Golden Age. So
that is neat. Actually, you're the one that got me into collecting. I got a few Golden Age comics, and just collecting the Silver Age and Bronze Age and all that, and then of course I had my Dick Tracy's and stuff I showed you on your show that time.
Yeah.
Well, yours the other day on your video, on your Wednesday questions, you showed a couple of your Dick Tracy comics.
Yeah, somebody asked me about Dick Tracy, so I showed some. Yeah.
Pretty cool. I mean, I know he's not worth anything, but still, I love it because
they're not really valuable for something. Dick Tracy doesn't get the love he deserves.
I just love the covers and stuff. But go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's fine. So I'll show a couple more. I'll show a few from The Seduction of the Innocent, and then these are all books that were mentioned in The Seduction of the Innocent, and they're ones that I think are kind of examples. So the first one I showed was a pre-code horror one. Now this next one is like a sci-fi cover / maybe Strange Worlds, and it's just a really great good girl. So you got a kind of a sexy girl and crazy monster with multiple eyes. So yeah,
that is. I mean, like you said, beat the artwork on those though. I mean, it's some great artists back then.
It's really fun stuff. Yeah. So this was done by Gene Fawcett. And he did some really great stuff. He was another one of these forgotten artists of the Golden Age. And then we got, this is the Al Feldstein cover. This is Weird Fantasy from EC Publications. And EC has a lot of the blame for the fall of the Golden Age of comics because they were producing some of the most wild stories and covers from the Golden Age. They're famous for their Tales from the Crypt and Vault of Horror and Weird Fantasy is another title. So This one is like a really cool book, actually, because it was mentioned in Destruction of the Innocent, but the other cool thing about it is I got it actually from the Johnny Craig collection. So this is like a certificate to say that it's from the Johnny Craig's collection. He's a very famous EC artist, so I thought that was kind of a bonus. I didn't know it at the time when I bought it. It had this thing that said it was from his collection. I was like, oh wow, that's really cool.
Oh gosh, so yeah. Covers in the golden age, they were pretty about how strict, in the old shows when we was growing up, when they were growing up in the 30s and 40s and 50s, you didn't have what you call graphic shows, and the comic books were pretty graphic on the covers, severed heads, and it's amazing on what we're reading. I wouldn't want my little 8-year-old probably to look at that, but a teenager, I don't see anything, or 12-year-old, can handle it, but some of the little kids were getting a hold of it, but they shouldn't have banned all the comics that got destroyed. Imagine, if they were still.
Yeah. So the fun thing is, at the time, comics were really geared for all ages. Like, they were much bigger than they are now. I mean, typically, if you think of a big print run of something, maybe it's 500,000 comics being produced. Like for some comic, that's a huge print. It's got a 500,000 books printed. Well, back in the golden age, they were printing a million issues of something. And you have like not just one publisher doing that. You have like dozens of publishers doing that, and they were producing just a massive amount of comics. And you'd have girls reading it, boys reading it, men reading it, women reading it. Everybody was reading it, and there was a real fear from the book companies, the other publishers, that comics were basically going to take over. There would be no more books. And so one of the sponsors, or one of the groups that really helped Frederick Wortham, who wrote The Destruction of the Innocent, were these publishers that were basically seeing it as a way to get rid of their competition. So there was a lot of there was a lot of politics as well that was happening, that was really, working against the comic industry. So, a lot of the time it was not just the books that were against it, but magazines and stuff like that. So, National Digest or Reader's Digest, or Ladies' Home Journal and stuff like that were all very against comics because they saw it as competition. So they would publish a lot of negative articles about comics, which is kind of interesting. Yeah. So I'll show random some more stuff here. Some more. This is some pre-code horror. Also mentioned in the Destruction of the Innocent. It's like Beyond, number 27. And then we got probably one of the more notorious Seduction of the Innocent books. This is Reformed Schoolgirl. And this one has actually a bit of a Canadian connection, because I'm Canadian, right? So this girl was a Canadian figure skater. And she posed for this. At first it was done as a book, but then later they republished it as a comic. So this is Reformed Schoolgirl. Frederick Wortham saw this book as corrupting youth and sexualizing, school and stuff like that, because she's supposed to be a schoolgirl, but not the very typical schoolgirl that you would see, right? So this is one of the more famous ones. If you actually get the Seduction of the Innocent book, if you open it up, there's actual lithographs inside where it shows different covers from the comics to show how salacious they were. And that's one of the ones that was featured because it's overtly sexual and targeted towards kids, because it's Reformed School Girl. It's like, this is, meant for kids, right? So,
Alan, how many have you got? Over half of them that were in the book that they outlawed?
I'm actually only missing like 3 or 4. There was 155 mentioned in the Destruction Instant, and I'm missing like 3 or 4. But the ones I'm missing, like one I can get if I really wanted to. If I cough up some money, I can buy it. It's like about $5,000 to buy one of them that I'm missing. The other 2 are ghosts. One I know is in the Smithsonian. So if I go and rob the Smithsonian, I can get one of the issues that I'm missing. And then the other one, you just never see. So it's only one they know about, the one in Smithsonian? Yeah, is that the only one they know of? They know of 2 copies in existence. One is at the Smithsonian, and one is in some like super rich guy's collection. I'm not that super rich guy. And I'm not that close, waiting it, Yeah. So that is awesome. Awesome, man. Yeah, so I'm really close on that one. So someday I'll try to finish it. I'll break into the Smithsonian and get that book. And it'll be all fine. But yeah, I operate my. Sorry, what? You kind of broke out there for a second. I said so you're breaking up a little bit. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Now I can hear you. You're sort of cutting in and out. Yeah, we're just cutting in and out. I was making that joke about the cell phone, so man, having that many of them, that is, like I said, I'm gonna say it again. I know I keep saying it, but your channel is, like I said, it's awesome how you can just you got so much knowledge when it comes to all this. I mean, anybody's got a question, which I need to be putting some questions in your channel too. But I watch it. I watch your Wednesday questions, but the knowledge that you have, man. I mean, you got to. One thing nobody can deny about you is you got a good mind. We almost. Yeah. So with the questions, it's not that I necessarily know every time, but what happens is, I have a week. They put their question, and then I can do some research, and I find out what the answers are. So sometimes I don't know, but I usually can do some research for them and find out the answers. So I try to make give it a little bit of information there if I can. So yeah. But yeah. Yeah, I've been collecting Spider-Man. Okay. Lately, and I've been collecting stuff a little bit, but I'm getting there a little bit on my collection. I'm having to do a little at a time, but I've learned from you. You don't have to have the high grades just as long as the cover looks good. There's some 3.5s that, by looking at the front of the cover, you real well. And I've learned that from you. I used to think I always had to have like an 8.0 or 9.8, but you don't have to have that. As long as you got it. And to me, I mean, it's not just an investment for me. It's enjoyment. And it's like you were talking about one day, you hope to, pass them on to your kid and stuff. And that's what I hope to do one day too. But it's more of an enjoyment for me to have them to display and I'm the same way. So, like a 4.0 is a good grade where it will present really reasonably well, and especially if it's in a slab. I'll show you an example. Actually, I have one right here that's a 4.0. Now, this is the thing. Once I mean, it presents really, really well. It does, yes. And the thing with this kind of book, usually it goes for about $200 to $300 per point. So, if you're not familiar with that point per point system, it's like you take the number here and multiply it by what the number per point is. So if it's $200, well, this is an $800 book. If it's $300, then this is a $1,200 book. So it's an easy way to figure out the price of things. So I think it's around $300 a point. So if you get up to like that 8.0, well, you're probably paying like several $1,000s for a book. And if you just maybe it looks a lot better. Sure, it will present a lot better, but that means that you've put a lot of money into one book, and that means you can't afford maybe a couple other books that you would like to have in your collection. And that's the way I always see it, is how much do I want to put into one particular book, which will prevent me from buying some other cool book that I really would like to have. So generally I like kind of the lower grades, because then it allows me to buy more of the cool books that I want to buy. And I'm not sure if that's necessarily the best philosophy, but it works for me, because I'm one of those people that likes having a very broad collection.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that some collectors are very different than me. Like, some collectors just want to have a very small curated collection, like maybe 100 books, and that's it. Like 100 books. And if they're focused on 100 books.
Uh-oh.
But that somebody was calling me, interrupting. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. So what I was saying was, if you focus on a small number of books, you can go for that higher grade, because you're not you have the money to put into more of a high quality collection. Whereas me, there's just too many books that I really love. Like, oh, I think that's cool. Like, so I go after too many things. So because of that, maybe the grades are a little bit lower in my collection. It's not like a super high grade collection.
Notice, you have one. It's was that restored? I can't remember your Amazing Fantasy
Which
that
one?
you had.
The Amazing Fantasy 15. It's missing a coupon, so somebody cut like a little coupon out of the page.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a green label. So it's a 3.0 green label. But it's it's still it didn't affect the story or anything. It's like just a small coupon that's been cut out. So
what?
I
don't care about the green labels. It doesn't, it shouldn't affect anything. I got the, the first Hobgoblin. It has the tattoos out of it, and they call it incomplete, which that's crazy.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. But like it's 3.0 or like you have the green label,
Mm-hmm.
You could get that real cheap. You realize, which all this anyway, the lower grades that you collected, like on your Hulk and your Amazing Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, all those lower grades, man, they're going outrageous. I was looking through, I was thinking about getting me an X-Men 1 or the Giant Size.
Actually, let me show you. Yeah, I mean, some of them are crazy, like expensive.
So for the first Punisher, that's my next grail. Like so.
Yeah, the first Punisher is a good one. Actually, it's a good time to buy that book. I just was talking about the first Punisher in my Friday video, like where I was showing my 10 books that didn't make my top 50 list anymore. They just got priced out of my top 50 list, and they were books where they actually had lost a lot of value since 2022. So the Punisher, which is a really popular character, that book lost, half of its value. So it's a really good time to pick it up. It's maybe a little bit undervalued right now. And it's one where...
It hasn't come through the mail yet, but I get 8.0 and
oh, that's a beautiful copy. That's really nice.
Well, good price for it. I'll just put it that way. I mean, I was amazed how cheap I got it. So it's really.
No, that's a really good grade. So that's I was almost thinking like last year, because the prices were so low, like, oh, maybe I should just upgrade a few of my Silver Age or Bronze Age things, because the prices were crazy. Like, just didn't make any sense. Like, people were almost giving away the books a bit, which is always very tempting.
It bothers me on the all that for. I waited a long time to get that book, and I finally get it, and then right after I buy it, the prices drop out on me. And I got a 9, like a 6, and of course, I got the Madam Web, and that's nothing. I shouldn't have got. Well, I'm glad to have it. I mean, I didn't pay.
I'm actually looking for a Madam Web. I have I have it as a raw copy. I paid like $5 or $10 for it back in the 90s, like way back when. So when it was not really valuable. I'd like to get like a nice slabbed copy of it just to have as a graded one. You can pick that book up for like about $100 or $200 in a nice high grade.
Yeah, I got a 9.4 newsstand. I think I paid like $190.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's really a pretty good price. You probably paid under what the price is currently. So, yeah. Yeah. So I was actually going to show you an example of a low grade book that I have. That's a big book. This one goes for about $20,000 per point. Okay.
Dang. Okay.
So $20,000 a point means that I'm not going to get like a 9.0 of this this book. I'm going to get like what I can afford. So I got a 0.5. Okay. But it's a nice looking 0.5. So 0.5, it's about $10,000 for this book. In this grade. And why it's a 0.5 is it's missing the centerfold. So a lot of these early wartime books, like this is 1942, they would only use one staple, or the staples that they did use, if they had two staples, would be just slightly too small for the comic. It'd be and a lot of the time they just wouldn't grip that centerfold. And so a lot of the time these centerfolds would fall out with a lot of these Golden Age books. So this one, it's very common to find it in a 0.5 where it's missing that centerfold. But this one is a grail book for me. I just, I always wanted to get key Wonder Woman books. And this is kind of one of the biggest keys, I would say one of the three big ones, where it's the first cover appearance of Wonder Woman. So, and
you do have appearance too, right?
Yeah, I actually have that handy. I'll show you that too. One sec. I brought a lot of books to show. So 1 second.
The 5 years cover, you wouldn't know that it went fine. It was real good.
Yeah. 1 sec here. Where did I put it? I have it here somewhere. Oh yeah, here it is. I brought a ton of books. I always bring too much to show. Too much. And this is Wonder Woman's first appearance. This is All-Star Comics number 8. And I think this would be a much bigger book. I mean, it's still a very expensive book. This is more like Sensation is actually a pretty expensive book compared to this one. This one, is like one in the $1 million club in high grade, but typically it's like around, I would say around $10,000 per point, or like 15 to 20,000 per point, maybe, kind of book. And this is like a 2.5. So I was quite happy to get it in that grade. That's a pretty reasonable grade. Just a cool book. This was actually the very first big boy book that I bought, where I, normally I'd only spent maybe a few $100s on a book, like maybe a couple $100, and I was like, oh, that's a lot of money. But then on this one, I sort of, I spent like 20,000 on it. So that was like a, bit of a commitment, and it sort of got me out of that mindset of like, oh, I can never get those books. It got me into buying those kind of bigger books. You know what I mean? Like where you have to sort of spend a bit of money to get one of those books, like Amazing Fantasy 15.
It's good too because you sell a lot of when you buy big books like that. A lot of the sellers let you pay payments one day on a lot of them. If you find the right seller, are they real picky about that? Or
yeah, actually, I just happened to, like I had just sold my house and had some cash in the bank, so I didn't have to do payments on this one. But normally,
in general,
normally I have to do payments on everything. I do payments on all these books because that's the only way I could afford them. It just happened that on that one had the extra money.
Yeah.
But what?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I was going to say, kind of on the comic book collecting. Mm-hmm. My wife, she doesn't mind me collecting, but I wish she had interest. And I mean, I don't bother her. I mean, she don't mind me collecting comics. She knows that's what I like to do, and she's understandable. But I mean, I wish she like I do. But everybody has their own interests, So
yeah, my wife doesn't like comics. My wife hates the comics, so it's actually quite hard to collect.
You remember the comic I showed you that had the it was a Justice League. Justice League. No, Justice. What does JSA stand for? I keep forgetting. You got
Justice Society Justice Society of America.
I have a 2000. I think it's 2008 or 2009. Anyway, it's an era comic book, and I showed it on your show that one when you had me on your channel.
Yeah, it was like Spider-Man on the inside or something like that, or something weird.
It was a DC, of course it was DC. I think it's JSA 87. It was one of, how they redo the title, like in the 2000s, like number 87 on the new title. And it had the cover on that one. It's a 9.4. In the middle of it, it has multiple Marvel title wraps. There's so many of them. On CGC didn't list them. And I've been looking everywhere to see if anybody has a comic. So, since I don't sell a lot on eBay, I put it on eBay. They wouldn't let me do my $500,000. I won't hurt, so I put $25,000 down on there. I know it's worth more than, and I believe, and I'm patting myself on the back. I believe I probably have the most rarest comic book that I've ever seen in my life. I collect era comics anyway, but I got it for sale for $25,000 on eBay. So that's off the subject. I'm sorry.
No, it's. But collectors kind of go for that kind of stuff where it's like such a unicorn, like it's like one of a kind, and also that's a bizarre one because it's DC book with Marvel interior, which is very odd. How did that even happen?
And more. How did it get more different titles? I would think with CGC said it's legit, because they graded it. You can tell them if somebody marries a cover. I got a comic book. It's a triple cover, and a double cover, and somebody had a bright idea putting an extra cover on there, and they graded it as a double covered married with one cover on top of it. So they seem like they know if you're messing with a comic. They said this was legit. If you look at the description, it's legit. And I'm trying to have different Marvel title wraps. I mean, different wraps from different books and with a DC cover. I also have which I showed on your channel, that had X-Men interior. Archie Comics had X-Men annual. I can't remember what annual it was inside of Archie Comics. So that's two different publications too, right? Archie's is his own public.
I wonder if they're using the same company to actually do the printing. For the even though they're different publishers, they could just use the same printer, and there was either a printing glitch or something.
And they just forgot to change out there or whatever, I guess, But I'm sorry to get off the subject, but
no, it's not a problem. What? Okay, I was thinking I could show some good girl art. I don't know. One of the things that I really got into, I was big in the 90s for collecting like the bad girls, like as I said, Lady Death, Vampirella, and all those characters. And then when I started getting into the golden age, I kind of went the same route, but with the pretty girls for golden age. And the style is called good girl art. It just means that it's well rendered, kind of a sexy girl on the cover. And this is an example of that. This is Startling Stories number 49. It's also known as the Bender cover because this robot, if you see it, it looks like Bender from Futurama. And it was the inspiration. This cover was the inspiration for Futurama. Okay, so and you got this sexy girl that's in red dress. So this one is done by Alex Schomburg. Yeah. So it's one that's kind of like a major grail for good girl artists, art collectors. This is another one of these crazy ones. This goes for like $4,000 per point. So it's like just per half point. So $8,000 per point kind of book. Just really crazy expensive one. But so I was quite happy to finally get that one in my collection. I didn't think I would ever find that one because it's one that collectors always kind of gravitate to. In Archie, one of the more famous good girl art covers is this one. This is a Bob Montana. It's the Archie number 50. And it's the kind of, Betty just sitting on the couch, having a phone call with Archie. Saying that, he called the wrong number, but if he comes over, she'll refund his nickel. So, it's just a nice kind of cute cover and a bit sexy, a bit suggestive, and just a fun one. So this is Archie number 50. And then we got, I was really into a lot of the characters from the Golden Age. So this is Blonde Phantom. Actually, in a really high grade. I don't normally buy this high of a grade, but this book kind of presented itself to me, and like somebody on Instagram had reached out, and to me, they had a really high grade. I was like, and the price wasn't that bad.
That is a good grade.
Yeah, it's really high grade. I mean, I think it's like either the highest or second highest on the census for this book. It's like you don't normally see Golden Age. Yeah. But I like Blonde Phantom, so I thought this one was a cool one to get.
White pages in your Golden Age?
Yeah, you can get books with white pages. Actually, one of the ones that I showed had white pages.
Oh.
It's rare. It's really rare. Kind of off-white. Off-white is considered actually a pretty good page quality because it's hard to get the pages to stay white for 80 years, right? So, and then this is a character that I really like, and this is another great good girl art one. This one was actually mentioned in the Seduction of the Instant as well. So this is Rula, number 22, and it's just this character is called Rula, and this one was done by Jack Kamen. And so, a lot of the time it was either Jack Kamen or Matt Baker that would do the covers for these ones. And they're both considered to be some of the greatest artists for good girl art. So Jack Kamen, he'd make these girls with really long, sexy legs and very busty girls usually. And then Matt Baker was more about just beautiful hair and very well-drawn women. This is Rula, another one from the Seduction of the Innocent. And then we got...
You?
Yep. Sorry. Go ahead.
I used to... for a while, even read the name, right? On artists, you're so good at artwork that you can kind of spot who the artist is without even reading their name, right?
Yeah,
you can kind of tell their style.
Yeah, I recognize their styles, right? So, after a while, if you just see the same art style over a while, like you start recognizing it. Like, I mean, I'm not 100% always right, but I can usually kind of guess who the artist is. So as I was mentioning, Rula. This is another Rula. This is the Matt Baker version of Rula. Little different. The difference that you can, like, if you want to sort of recognize the art styles, one of the things that you can do is if you look at Rula's hair, it's a lot more dynamic looking. Like it looks like it's almost like alive. Like it's like very well drawn. That's a way that you can tell it's done by Matt Baker. So this is Zoot number 8. I don't always remember the issue numbers, but yeah. So these Matt Baker ones have gone crazy recently. It's like very, very hot right now. Like if you looked at these books like maybe 2 years ago, you could have gotten them for maybe half the price or a third of the price. They just have gone crazy in terms of pricing now. It used to be like a couple $100. Now it's like a few $100. I don't know why. Maybe I've been talking about Matt Baker too much on my channel because the prices have gone really crazy. So I might be my own worst enemy in terms of
you're in.
In terms of promoting books. But I really like these kind of Jungle Girl books because it's they're kind of fun. And if you ever read the interiors, they're kind of interesting. Like they're just like very over the top, like just really crazy stuff inside. So that's from a publisher called Fox Featured Syndicate, and their interiors are really, really well done art-wise, but just really over the top. Like, people getting poked in the eye, or like virgin sacrifices and people in bondage, people getting decapitated, or something crazy going on inside. So it's pretty interesting stuff on the inside of those books. It's hard to believe that.
That's like Batman.
What?
That's like Batman. I think you were telling me that Batman used to use them, and didn't he? He didn't. He used to kill people, didn't he, Batman? And they toned it down after the.
Yeah, they sort of. Eventually,
was
kind of. Made him a little bit more innocent. Not innocent, but not so violent. I guess more to appeal to kids. So the other thing was he would use a gun back in the day. And one of the more popular covers that collectors go after is Batman with like a machine gun. He's just like shooting down all the bad guys. It's like pretty crazy. So very different Batman than the Batman that we know now, where he doesn't even kill, or he doesn't use a gun. Things were very different in the Golden Age. But I actually have a really good Batman.
It seems like they're getting more.
They seem like they're getting more what?
It seems like they're getting back to the old way, where it's showing a little more. It's not, more violent, in comics like it used to be. They're not toning it down as much, like they used to. It's getting more. I guess you say more of a teenage
adult. Yeah. Well, they realize that people that are buying comics nowadays, people that are buying comics are our ages rather than like teenagers anymore. It's like the collector of comics nowadays, the demographic, I would say, is like 35 plus. So here's one of my bigger Batman keys. This is Detective Comics number 38. This is the very first appearance of Robin. So just a big.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
I was so excited when I got this book. This is like, a book that I never thought I would be able to afford. But I was very nice. I met a guy that had this book and was willing to take payments on it. So I paid like a little bit every month for about 8 months to get this book. So Batman.
That's a great right there.
Yeah, really hard book to get actually. But I was like, I mean, and like one of the things that I talk about on my channel is buying restored. So this is like a 7.0 restored book. And if I wanted to buy this, probably it'd be close to like 400,000 if it was a blue label. But buying it restored, it was like 14,000. The weird thing is, if you get like a 0.5 grade, which is like, missing something or totally destroyed looking, it's going to cost you probably around 10 to 15,000. So buying a 7.0, beautiful looking book, is actually the same price as buying just the most ugly book you can find. It doesn't make any sense to me. So why not get the really good looking one for the same price, right? And it's not like it's like a whole bunch of different books put together or anything like that. It's just, it has a bit of color touch. This one like actually has a fair amount done to it. It has color touch, pieces added. When they say pieces added, it can be from other books sometimes, but in this case, it just means that like sometimes the corners of the books will kind of fall off. I don't know why, but they get weak on the corners, and a good restorer can actually glue those corners back on and reattach them. So that's what this one was. And then so pieces added, tear seals, cover cleaned and reinforced. So very like nothing like too wild or crazy. It's not like it's like a Frankenstein book. It's just a nice looking copy, and because of that, I got it for a deal. Just like much cheaper. So that's one of the things I like about restored.
I don't know why restored bring a higher price, but I know it's good for collectors because they're able to get a good looking book, that looks really good.
And the funny thing is, back in the day, if you look at the census for a lot of these books, especially the major keys, most of them are restored. And the reason is, if I had a nice looking Detective 38 back in the day, like back in the early 90s or late 80s, or even earlier, what I would do is say, okay, find a really good restorer, and basically they would kind of conserve the book and make it look as pretty as possible. And you'd pay a few $1,000s just to have your book look as nice as possible. And that was very common, especially with these kind of bigger books. But when CGC came out, and all of a sudden they were giving restored books a purple label, all of a sudden people were like, oh, restored book, oh, don't touch that, that's scary. Like, even though just a few years earlier everyone was getting their books restored. It's really cool, quite silly, but I don't mind personally, because it means that I can get some really great books that look really great for really cheap prices. So that's been one of the things that I've enjoyed. So yeah.
Well, you keep talking about all this. People's gonna get wise like you are, and then they'll start shooting the restored labels up on price.
Yeah, that can happen. Actually, I've been seeing restored books going for more lately. So maybe I am having an influence on the market, because I saw some restored books go for almost as much, or actually in one case, it actually went for more than the blue label, which didn't make much sense to me, but yeah, it can happen. So I don't know. I'm not sure. Like, the thing is, like, it's not that my channel is big or anything. It's not like I'm like a major influence on the world, but I figure if I influence like 2 or 3 people, that's all I need. If you just influence 2 or 3 people that are collectors of these kind of books, well, 2 or 3 people bidding against each other at auction will drive the prices up. And it can have that kind of major impact on the market. So it's it's amazing how little can have a big influence on the market. So that's what I think is kind of my own Achilles heel in this case. Where
Ask you a question.
Sure.
What's your? I mean, me and you're probably the same way. I bet we're probably the same way when it comes to bidding. Now, what's your secret on like? I never bid early. I have my bid. If it's eBay, I'll have my bid typed in, and I'll have it kind of high, and I'll get ready, and I'll 2 seconds, and I'll hit that button. Nobody have a chance to overbid. But a lot of people like to bid early. They'll keep bidding and make the price go up.
Yeah,
I'll wait till the last second to enter my bid. I do the same
as you. I bid at the very last second, and then if I get it for like I put in a price that's usually the same as what I'm like the most that I'm willing to pay for the book. Like if I was going to just buy it now or something like that, that's the price. Now, and if whatever it sells for, if it sells for under that, then I've won. If it goes above that, well, then I didn't get the book, and I wasn't willing to pay that much for it anyway. So that's generally been my method. Lately, though, I've been sort of unlucky. A lot of these books are going for way more than what my maximum price would have been. So I don't know what people are thinking, but they're outbidding me. Because I've actually had it a few times where within the last 5 seconds, it went from $100, which I thought, oh wow, that's a steal if I get it for that, and I'll put in like a $200 or $300 bid, and then it'll go to $700. I'm like, what? Doesn't even make sense. So yeah, so sometimes it doesn't work, but at least you're always paying the max that you're willing to pay. You're not going above your own maximum. So yeah. So I was going to ask you a question. What books are you going currently after? Or what books are you chasing right now? Well, right now it's Spider-Man. Daredevil, Spider-Man, and some X-Men. I got the first Polaris, not the cover appearance, but the actual first appearance. Yeah. And so both are nice. The first appearance of Rhino, which is it's not it's got the first appearance of Rhino is a real cheap key you can get. You might not have the money for, like me. I don't have the money for the first Green Goblin, but I always thought the first Rhino was undervalued. I got the. Oh yeah, it is. And I got the second appearance of Daredevil, which I got it in the 4/5, and then I got the Daredevil number 7. That's his first red suit. I find smaller, like significant key, little things that's a key. But first Mary Jane Watson, the first Gwen Stacy, the death of Gwen Stacy, and the death of Green right now. So I'm working on my collection of Spider-Man and Daredevil. Yeah, I mean that's generally the way I go too. They're not for those real little keys first. Yeah, I mean that's what I've been doing right now, and I'm gonna probably get back on my golden age. I go back and forth. I want to get some more Dick Tracy. I got about 15 or 20 of those, and I got the highest grades in a lot of them. The highest grades that's on the census on a lot of them. I even got a white pager, Dick Tracy, 1948 white pager. Dick Tracy. Oh, that's really nice. That's impressive. It's always cool to have the best copy or something. Yeah. So that's. Oh yeah, cool. It is. I mean, even though it's not, but I know I have the highest copy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's cool. I have a few like that where it's not necessarily a big deal because the value is not there. I was surprised. Like I had this one that's like I paid literally like almost the cost of the slab, but it's the highest grade on the census. But it's just a book that it's from the golden age, but nobody's interested in it. But it looks. I thought it looked cool. And if you can get it for cheap, why not? So. And someday, like the market can be really fickle, right? It's sort of like back in the day, like going back to like the 60s and 50s, Westerns were really popular. Like Westerns, like with like Zorro or what a Lone Ranger or I don't know, Bush Cassidy or some like, I'm just trying to think of Western characters. I'm not really good at it. But the point is, those books used to be fairly pricey, back in the day. People collected those. Now, those books are relatively cheap because nobody's interested in Westerns. But you never know. The market in 20 years' time could be complete opposite, where Westerns are the big books that everyone's chasing, and so I always find it's nice to buy things where you're sort of that you like them and you're a bit of a lone wolf in it. You're buying stuff that you like and that maybe the market isn't, isn't in agreement with you. They're buying other stuff. So, that's been sort of my philosophy. Like I was buying Warren, for example, when nobody was interested in Warren magazines. And I was buying them for like $1 or $2, and now those same books are worth like 30, 40, maybe a few thousand for some of them. So I always like that kind of way of thinking, like where I'm a little bit buying things a little bit out of phase with the rest of the world. So yeah. So maybe Dick Tracy will be the big one in the future. Yeah.
Or maybe, I know that era comic books are getting more expensive now. I used to get them like $20 or $30. Now go on eBay and look at them now. they're up there in the price.
Yeah. Well, I think that was a real shift that I saw during the COVID era of buying comics. That what collectors were doing were they were going after more and more obscure things. They were going after the Canadian price variants. They were going after like, error or recalled books. So you were buying things that you liked, and it just happened that the market caught up with you, and now you have to pay up to get those same books.
That's why I'm switching gear, going back collecting Spider-Man and X-Men. One thing I hate too is I hate the way these people are not real collectors, and they'll sell a Marvel movie or something, and they'll buy and get the price to go up. Or if a movie flops, everybody wants to make their comic books go down in value. I wish people wouldn't relate movies with comic books.
They pump and dump where they get all excited. But for me, like I actually will buy books based on watching a movie. Like, if I like the movie or if I think the character is somewhat cool, I'll go out and try to find that character's first appearance. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I think it's weird that people can be so fickle where they love the character one day and then they hate them the next. I think that's a weird way of acting. I think that's, I'm more of a collector that wants to keep it in my collection.
You keep it in your collection. You're not out to flip that book, and I'm not either. These people are, and they mess everything up for everybody else. Is what I'm saying. But it's okay. It gives you an idea on some of the characters that you might have forgot about. You say, "Oh yeah, I forgot about him," and I'm going to look him up, and I like to have that his first appearance. That kind of a lot of that reminds me. A lot of these movies do help you remind you of some of the characters that you don't have in your collection, and you want to have a lot of the major keys of the people, and it gives you ideas on some of the movies. And if you're the collector, that's different. It's like you said, you're just doing it because you want to add to your collection. I ain't got a problem with that. I just don't like people trying to make money. Movie though.
I'm sort of weird. I'm a nostalgic buyer, so I'll buy like based on titles that I sort of have like nostalgia for. For example, like I bought like Strawberry Shortcake #1. Am I ever going to read Strawberry Shortcake #1? Probably not. But I have it in my collection, and I'm nostalgic for it because my sister, who was older than me, would always play with strawberry shortcakes when I was a kid. And, I play, want to just hang out with my sister. So I'd like play along with her. And so I'm a little bit nostalgic to that book, I like that kind of collecting. But in a way, I don't mind the flippers too much. Because they can bring interest into the hobby, and I kind of want this hobby to have legs, like be something that still continues into the future. And if there's people that are making money from it, if there's people that are bringing excitement to the collecting, where there is big money. Oh, look at this book! It sold for $3 million or something crazy. That brings excitement to the hobby and brings new collectors to the hobby. And I think that is an important element, whether we like them or not, because they drive the price of our books up too much sometimes for like really weird things. But that's a different story. But I see it as like almost like a necessary evil. I don't know. So yeah. So
I see your point. About that, because, like you said, if it just stays the status quo, it can be like it was in flatline and nothing ever go up, and comics would kind of like die. But that's one thing about comic books. Baseball cards. Look at baseball cards. Nobody wants to collect baseball cards no more, but comics seem to survive the test of time. They're still popular, and baseball cards are not like they were.
Well, the problem with baseball cards was it was kind of different than comics in the respect that you had like what was understood about baseball cards is if I get this player's rookie card, then it's valuable. Okay, that was the concept that everyone could relate to. And then what happened was in the modern era, baseball cards became a thing where you have like all these different companies that would produce that same rookie card. And then it's like, it didn't really, it made it hard for collectors to gravitate to a particular rookie card because it was like all these different companies that produced it. That's the one advantage comics have. Like if you are interested in Spawn or interested in Batman or interested in whatever, you have to go to that one company to get that book. There's not like 20 different companies that produce the same comic. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, you got a point on that.
So I think, and also comics in this modern era are really quite rare. I told you I collected during the 90s. And if you look at the 90s, like it was like, X-Men 1 in the 90s version had like 5 million printed. It's like so crazy. A lot printed. Now you look at books and, usually, 20,000, 50,000, being published. And if it's a really, really popular book, maybe 500,000. It's not at the level of the golden age or even the 90s age. It's really, comics have become much more niched. And then you get a new effect that we have in the modern era, which is the variant cover, where you get books where, they'll be very limited, maybe only a couple hundred produced of that cover. And that makes it very desirable as a collectible item because, if you have something that there's only 200 of them out there, or sometimes like I've seen ones where the edition size is like 10 or 25. So that's it. There's only 25 of them out there. That makes it very interesting and exciting for collectors because you can say, well, look, I have something that you don't have. And, you can kind of feel cool about yourself, right? And I think that's one thing that's really happened in the hobby that has really kind of catered to the collector gene, I always think of. So I think, I think comics have that excitement. And comics, for the most part, are what is creating the culture currently in our society. Because if you think about all the movies that are coming out, well, most of them are based on comics. So, these books that we love really are the cultural influences right now. And I think a lot of people are kind of, they watch the movie and they're like, oh, I got to check out the comic. Now, if the movies continue to go the way that they are, that might change. The movies are so bad nowadays. But if they start making good movies again, I think the comics will become hot again. Yeah.
Yeah, they're going too woke. They're going too woke. And they're messing X-Men 97. I can't wait for that to come out. And they're messing that up before we even get a chance to watch it. You know, it's.
Yeah, I'm sort of worried about it. One thing that I don't like that they've done, and this is a really common thing nowadays, where they desexualize. They don't want girls to be girls. They don't want women to be sexy or anything like that. They want them. Oh, they should be kind of boy-like, you know. And I've heard that that's what they're doing with Rogue. Where they're kind of making her look kind of like a boy, which is not how she was. She used to be a very sexy character, especially in the original X-Men.
I've seen a picture of her.
Yeah.
Butt's flat.
Her butt's flat. Her chest is flat too. So it's just like, okay, yeah. Like I always joke about this on my channel, that I want more females in movies. Like females, actual females, not girls pretending to be boys. So yeah, I think that's something that I think women, one of their great traits is that they're beautiful, and I think I'd like to see more of that kind of femininity in movies.
Did you watch the Supergirl? Did you watch the Supergirl TV series?
Alan? I did. The Supergirl.
You remember that girl?
What?
But you remember that girl that was the last 2 or 3 seasons? She was the one. I can't remember what her name was. She's the one that had the mask like Robin. That was actually a guy, dude. And I didn't know that. This person had transitioned.
Oh. Yeah. So
this guy actually into a.
I didn't watch that series just because it was so woke. I couldn't handle it. I couldn't watch it.
Yeah. I mean, that girl on Supergirl.
Is that Supergirl or was that back?
Yeah, one of the characters. One of the characters. Yeah.
I didn't know that. I watched Supergirl the first 2 seasons. I watched the first 2 seasons, but
the last. You get a chance to go on YouTube. You don't have to watch it, but go on YouTube and look at the covers of the last 3 seasons. There's a girl on there, and I'm not lying. I could not tell. I mean, I didn't know it was a guy. I mean, he had and all that time. You would never know. I mean, that's one person. Usually you can tell when a guy becomes a. You can kind of see the traits, but that had me fooled, and I was. He was playing a person that was a guy that turned into a girl, and I thought, well, she's a good actress or whatever. I mean, because she looks like a girl, and it was a true story that the person really turned into. It's kind of like on the X-Men, X-Men original movies, the one that played what's her name, Kitty Pryde.
Kitty Pryde, okay.
That character. So she transitioned into a guy. So I mean, good Lord. Wow. But
yeah, I think there's something in the water or something. I don't know what's going on there, but
and I live in the United States. We're actually a lot of European countries. I know this don't have nothing to do with comics, but a lot of European countries are going away from that now, and America's embraced it. So
yeah, no, they've done the studies. They've seen the long-term effects, and it is harmful. Yeah. So yeah. But yeah.
Yeah. We'll get back in comics. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. No, it's okay. I don't mind the political stuff, but I actually have to wrap it up because I have to go back to work. I have to earn some money to pay for all these silly comics that I buy.
Oh yeah, you're right. I realized. I've enjoyed it so much. I didn't realize we've been an hour and 13 minutes. Alan, I appreciate you being on my channel. If please like, subscribe. If you want to join Alan's channel, he's Comic Collector Geek, and he has a real good YouTube channel, and he has a lot of knowledge on Golden Age and a lot of the Silver Age and Bronze and some modern stuff. But he knows his stuff. And Alan, I want to thank you for being on my channel, and looking forward to watching some more of your videos. And you have a good day.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, bye.